Welcome to the Card Text. This is yet another episode, another Card Takes episode, in which we each pick one card from the recently previewed FFG Marvel Champions pack. In this case, it is Gambit. So joining me today is the usual suspects, Scott and Theorel.
Hello.
Hello.
And we also have a special guest today, Sko.
Hey, everybody.
And Sko, he's been a long member of the rules channel in the main Marvel Champions Discord, and recently put out a great video on Shadowcat, which I'll have linked in the description. Did you want to say anything about that video real quick, Sko?
If you're confused about Shadowcat, then hopefully you can watch it, and it can help you figure out how defending and responses work, because they are not easy.
Yep, it's a great video. I do recommend it as well. Okay, so card takes. Let's just get right into the cards, and we'll have our guest start off with one of the cards he picked from the Gambit pack.
All right, so the card that I picked to have takes on is Charged Card. It's a 2-cost event. It has the attack and superpower traits, and it says hero action attack, deal 4 damage to an enemy. For this attack, if Gambit's throw to card ability removed at least bullet point 1 counter, this attack gains ranged. Bullet point 2 counter, this attack also gains piercing. Bullet point 3 counters, this attack also gains overkill. I picked this card for a couple of reasons. One, it's like one of your bread and butter attack events, and I think it's fairly good because these keywords are going to matter. At least they do in Mutant Genesis. There's tough everywhere, so piercing and overkill are pretty handy. I also find it worded fairly oddly. It says, that second sentence says, for this attack, if Gambit's ability removed at least such and such a counter, this attack gains whatever, over and over. So it keeps saying this attack a bunch of times. I want you guys to correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like this is a different way that bullet points have been used, or at least it's kind of unusual to me, that the bullet point is like the second half of the sentence, but starting the sentence again from the beginning, if you know what I mean. Have we seen a card like formatted like this one?
I think the only other one I know of is the Scarlet Witch card.
Hexbolt.
Hexbolt, yes. But we usually save the technical stuff for the cards at the end. But we can bring that up later. We'll keep it in mind. So this card for Gambit is your pick. What do you see it comboing with from cards in the pool already? How would you build them to make this card either combo or synergize with something?
Cards in the pool already. All right, number 1 is it's a superpower, as is his other attack event, which costs 3. So like every X-Men, he's going to love Deft Focus, and maybe he'll come with an X-Men art-themed reprint of it, which would be great. He's going to love things that attack, so if you're in aggression, you're going to have martial prowess. The fact that he has a normal attack that can get overkill, if you're spending 3 counters on this, and you're doing 7 damage overkill, which is a pretty huge chunk, and you're spending the counters, but you're getting it for really cheap for only a 2-cost event. So you might want to dip into excess damage kind of things like healing card, Moment of Triumph. Yeah.
Scott and Theorel, what are your thoughts on Charged Card and his aggressive attack superpower?
It's one of the cards I was thinking of picking. It's interesting because you've got quite a bit of flexibility in terms of how many counters you use. And do we want to talk about the throw to card ability as well?
It's key to his kit, so but I don't want to step on anybody's toes in case they picked that card. So maybe after we get through each card. But yes, he has the ability to change the range of damage in his attack cards.
Yeah, so you can potentially do quite a bit of damage with this, and then decide whether you want it ranged or ranged with piercing or ranged with piercing and overkill. So yeah, it's nice.
Like fully kicked at 7 damage overkill is like what I would expect to spend 3 and the card for on like a signature level event. So
yeah,
by investing the counters, which are an alternative resource, you get that for a lot cheaper. Good stuff.
I think it's interesting the counters kind of acting as a resource of sorts. They're not quite a full resource value, but they're somewhere in there in that range. And so I think this is a good representation of that because, as you said, it's kind of you would expect this to be a 3-cost card. It's a 2-cost card in terms of once you're spending the 3 counters. So it's kind of like 3 counters is a resource in that sense, which is not totally unreasonable. It's a little bit, damage is a little high for 1 resource. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting things to go on with that. Where exactly do you spend these counters?
We'll move on to the next pick. That's going to be Scott.
Yeah, I am going to pick one of the aspect cards that comes in his pack, which is Breaking and Entering. It's a 2-cost justice event. It has energy resource. It's thwart traded, and it says play only if your identity has the spy or thief trait. Action, thwart, remove 3 threat from a scheme. So, like some of my previous picks, I'm picking this because of the sort of design space that it's in. And yeah, it's not form locked at all. So potentially down the road, if we get a hero with either of those traits, then they will be able to use it as well. But it opens up the possibility for particularly Black Widow to stay in Alter Ego and be able to remove threat and do a thwart ability, which is usually a hero locked thing. So yeah, I again, it's one of those cards that I hope points towards them exploring this part of the design space a bit more in the future.
Yeah, and I look forward to more thieves, more spies, because I just like that theme. Both of those. Covert Ops would be, I guess, the hero version of this kind of card. Covert Ops is 3 cost. It removes 4 threat and it confuses, right? Does it just confuse, or does it need to meet a condition to confuse? I can't remember.
I think it's just confuse the villain.
Oh, it's the villain specifically. And that so breaking and entering is just the aspect version of that. So how do we think that compares to Covert Ops? It's obviously 1 less, but it comes with a caveat that you need the trait. It's not bad, in my opinion, compared to Covert Ops. It's 3 threat is still pretty good.
I think entering is an interesting design space because of the fact that you can play it in Alter Ego at all. Being able to play it in either form for those characters that can use it, I think, is nice, because if it was Alter Ego locked, it might be harder to run. As is, it's runnable, and then it's just a question of how valuable is that Alter Ego thwart? Is it valuable enough to include it over something like For Justice? Isn't, I mean, 1 extra threat on the mental can make a big difference, but then again, it's not like it's that big of a gap. I don't know. It's interesting thing to me is because it opens up this ability to stay in Alter Ego for multiple turns. I think it is a tricky balance, the thwart numbers in Alter Ego, because I think kind of comes to the issue that popped up with Risky Business, I would say, where it was kind of like you could go hero mode and leave him in Norman, and then you're not being pressured on damage. You're not being pressured on threat, except for, when he gets an advance or something. And so you just don't have pressure anymore, and then just get all set up and win. And so, I know some people were kind of sad that it was only through. They feel like there's a level to which this card is not as efficient as, For Justice or other hero thwarts. But I think that's good because it can't be. I mean, if you could just thwart from Alter Ego,
Yeah,
you can just take all the pressure out of the game, and then suddenly it's like, okay, well, just sit here and win.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up too. So I think when this came out, when the Gambit preview came out and people saw this, I think they were kind of meh on it. Scout, would you agree that I think most people weren't that amazed by this card?
Yeah, very lukewarm.
And how do you feel about it?
I agree with Theorel that it can't be stronger than this, or I mean, this effect can't become too prevalent, because then you'll be like, we can't be able to live in Alter Ego forever and ever and just pay a few resources every turn. That kind of breaks the normal challenge of the game. Kind of similarly to how like being in hero mode and playing an ally every single turn can remove that game until they design things that kind of break it. So it makes sense. It has to be like low efficiency, and even I think making it Alter Ego locked would make it a much worse card for like normal use. But if they made it Alter Ego locked and stronger, it would have that kind of like game breaking issue. So it's kind of cool where it is. It's an option compared to other similarly costed thwart events. It doesn't blow my mind necessarily, but it's cool.
And I think some of the cards that could work with it are it's a thwart, so it's the upgrade that pays for a thwart.
Sense of justice.
Yes, sense of justice. You could use sense of justice with it. Trying to think of the other. It's a resource that came in Phoenix's pack.
Yeah, passion for justice.
Yes, passion for justice. It only gives you one, but one additional removal, so that's a 4 right there. That's not bad. I mean, I think anything that you could use to remove 4 or more from whatever scheme happens to be out is pretty strong. If you're still sitting in AE, not getting attacked, don't know if there's any other, but there's very few thwarts that you can use in Alter Ego. This is probably the only aspect one, I guess.
It kind of occupies a very similar space to counterintelligence. Same efficiency and same like not form lockedness. Although counterintelligence has some pros and cons. You can only have one active, but it can sit on the table. But those two together, the fact that they stack with each other, and that confuse stacks on yet a third kind of axis, does mean that the live your life in alter ego deck can definitely exist more than it used to if you happen to have one of these two traits. Which unfortunately, I don't know if these 3 heroes really want that. They all definitely have things on their hero side that they want to do probably every turn, but it's there.
Mm-hmm. I have seen some pretty strong Black Widow decks that just stay in AE most of the time, like in 2-player solo, I think.
Well, that's only getting better.
And the whole spy trait thing makes me think or hope that Nick Fury comes out and does something interesting with it too. But we can move on. I think it's a nice segue into my card, if you don't mind me going next, Theorel.
I'm good with that.
Okay. So my pick is going to be Remy LeBeau, the alter ego card. So Remy has 3 recovery, the mutant and thief trait, and his ability is Thief Extraordinaire. It's an action, thwart. Exhaust Remy LeBeau and look at the top 2 cards of the encounter deck. Discard one of those cards. Remove threat from a scheme equal to the number of boost icons on that card. And that discarding 1 is the text cost there. And he's got 6 hand size, 9 hit points. So I picked this card because I do kind of like the theme of being a thief, staying in AE, and just stealing stuff. The ability here kind of makes me feel like the encounter deck, I guess, is the safe that I'm cracking. So when I discard the 2, I can get to see what's inside and remove threat. I think that's nice. And aside from all the cards we already mentioned, yeah, I think being able to remove threat in alter ego form is really strong, or can be really strong. But having it as a starting ability that doesn't go away on your alter ego can be really, really strong too. And on average, you're going to hit 1 to 2 threat with this ability. And I think it's nice that they kind of balanced it with discarding from the encounter deck, which is not initially that bad. I think some people feel it's not that bad in general, but it will, if you do it a little too much, it's going to come back to bite you later on. But as far as, controlling what's going on, building your board and then just flipping and winning, I feel like even though it's not very thematic, he would be really impactful with the whole shield suite. So global logistics, maybe surveillance team, and Monica Chang. What are the others I was thinking of? Blindfold and global logistics basically should be able to help you like plot out your next turn if you look at that many cards and just put them back however you want, right? I should probably read these cards. So Blindfold is from Cyclops pack.
These shield thwarts and filtering are not form locked either. Surely that's a thing.
No, they're not. The shield events are just actions, but you do have to have like the one, I guess, cost there is that you have to have stuff in play that you could exhaust in order to do whatever it is they let you do. But so Blindfold. Okay, so Blindfold is 3 cost from Cyclops' pack. 2 thwart, 0 attack, 2 health, psionic X-Men. Response, after Blindfold enters play, look at the top 5 cards of the encounter deck, discard 1. put the rest back in the same order. And similar to that is global logistics ability, which lets you look at the top 4 of player or encounter deck and discard any number and put the others back on top or bottom of that deck in any order. So you could mess around with how many was blindfold again? 5. That's a lot of cards out of it.
She discards 1. So
Discards 1. Okay, so another 4. So that's about 8 cards. That's a lot of control, I think, for a player to have on their alter ego side. I haven't played them yet, obviously, but how do you guys feel? Do you think would be workable, or?
I think having deck inspections combined with Gambit will be really nice in terms of knowing when you can flip to alter ego and use his alter ego ability to actually thwart. Like if you already know what the top 4 cards are, you know how effective that thwarting is going to be. Even up to, well, in solo, potentially the next 2 times you use it. But that's pretty significant. I guess you have to ask yourself the question, when you're in hero form and you're ready, and you have thwart you need to deal with, do you thwart as a guaranteed 1, or do you flip down and exhaust for the variable quantity? So having that variable known.
YOLO. Go big or go home.
Well, yes. I think I would always flip down and exhaust. I mean, I can't think of a situation where you don't take that risk, but knowing ahead of time.
Yeah. I think it's nice, almost like they thought this through, that if you actually do want to live in alter ego, it's nice to have something to use your basic activation on, if you're full health and just chilling. So it's nice that when he's living in alter ego as the mutant director of S.H.I.E.L.D. or whatever, you can still exhaust him every turn to gain information and maybe some thwart. Free value in that case. Yep. It's going to happen a lot, I feel like.
Yeah, the scrying for information, I think, is going to be really strong. It usually is in card games, right? So that's a lot of information you get for the next villain phase that you could prepare for.
Yeah, even normal play of Gambit, he would kind of like to know what the boost is going to be against the next attack, because he wants to, what's that card? Something he has cares about defending and not taking damage. So if you can know and set up that it's low, yeah, Gambit's Guild Armor. So even though the card that he sees is going to be a boost, generally speaking, that's information you're actually going to want, even when you're flipping up in the hero.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you guys use it a lot, but I kind of like chance encounter with this kind of combo, I guess. So you could bring back blindfold whenever you want, or Monica Chang again to help get more counters, or put more surveillance teams in there as well. But
Pull back your free rogue.
Exactly. So any final thoughts on Thief Extraordinaire, the AE for Gambit?
It's kind of cute that if you're confused, you would still get to do the scrying, because the looking at the top 2 and discarding a card is the cost. So if you're playing some Infinity Gauntlet or something, you can get a cheap confused pop and still gain the information. Nice.
Oh, that's a great point. All right, so we'll move on to the final card for Gambit's pack, Theorel.
Yeah, so the card I picked is the Royal Flush, 3-cost event. It's an attack, superpower, hero action attack. Place 1 charge counter on Gambit. Deal 0 damage to an enemy. Deal 0 damage to an enemy. Deal 0 damage to an enemy. It's an energy resource. And I mean, there's a lot of things that I love about this card. I like the way that it goes with his throw to card ability, which, since none of us talked about, is the interrupt on his hero form. Throw to card, interrupt. You play an attack event, remove up to 3 charge counters from here. That event deals +1 damage for each counter removed. I mean, that's just like the whole fact of him having this attack ability, which will triple any attack boosts that you can find to give it, which is just a lovely hook to build aggression Gambit deck. For all the attack boosts you can get, and getting triple value is great. I also just love the fact that there's a card that deals 0 damage to an enemy 3 times. I mean,
sounds terrible. Very low amount of damage.
So it's so great. Most wonderful thing. That they can write that on a card 3 times in a row. And just there's something about that that just brings joy to me.
Scott, any thoughts on Royal Flush?
Again, it was one that I considered picking because it's a great card. It's and with the placing a charge counter on there, you can effectively spend 1 to get 3 lots of 1 damage and not have spent a charge counter. So you're always going to be doing a minimum of 1/1/1, and that's pretty good. Even if you're only pinging off 3 toughs, that's great.
Yeah, the flexibility of targeting multiple enemies is super good. The really high flashy ceiling of 9, 12, 15 damage with these effects, also very cool. Of course, we're drawn to that. It's cool.
But this won't work with something like Honed Technique.
Oh yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, it doesn't work with that because that's aggression events only.
Would be beautiful. There are cards that do work with it, which are good. Or they will be fun.
I like Royal Flush. I think it's really strong, and I think just he has so much damage and so much versatility with that damage. I would really love to play him in a really good or interesting aggro deck. I think he could get a lot out of that.
I'm definitely excited for Gambit just in terms of the aspect hooks that he has. I mean, we talked between the of these two very different sides of him in the cards that we picked here, but he has other stuff in his kit too that gives him other directions that he can grow. I think, I don't know, that's probably the thing that excites me the most in terms of Gambit is just like you read one of his cards and you're like, oh wow, this would go great with and this from this aspect, and oh, this would go great with this and this from this other aspect. Just kind of which direction do you go? There's so many ways that he can go. So
totally. Yeah, I totally agree.
What do you think of his cost curve? I haven't mapped it out yet, but it looks a little expensive, right? He's got the 2 Royal Flush, the other 2 cost cards, but it seems to be around what, like 2? The average 2 cost?
For his events, yeah.
Yeah.
The events, but then he's got a free defense event and 1 cost upgrade or cost upgrade and support, and
Yeah, he doesn't really need to set up anything to do his stuff because he gets his counters just on his ability. I think the events are pretty fairly costed.
Okay. So it should be pretty smooth to play those. And like you said, there's only a couple of upgrades. I think one we don't know about, the other we do know about. So mostly events. Yeah, that I like. Okay. All right. Well, moving on. So here's where we talk about the card text and the rules.
The good stuff. Just kidding.
The good stuff, the meat and potatoes. Okay, so we'll go all the way back to Sko's card, charged card. So you were saying the format was off to you?
Well, there's a couple things. One, it's one of those not officially an alteration effect, but a thing you need to read in its entirety before you can do it, kind of thing. So, whatever we call those, it's one of those. Also, don't you guys think that the "for this attack" at the beginning of the second sentence, do those words do anything, or would the card mean the same thing if they weren't there? I feel like that sentence could just say, if Gambit's throw to card ability removed at least 1, this attack gains ranged. 2, this attack gains piercing. 3, this attack gains overkill. I don't know. We just felt like we had to put a clause there, but
I agree. I think it seems a little redundant for the first for this attack, right? You would just go with if.
yeah, we're just absolutely sure that it lasts for this attack.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question there. I feel like it's mechanically unnecessary. I do feel it. The sentence itself feels a little clunky without it to me. Like just the two sentences, the ability itself. It needs a transition.
Yeah, that must have been what they were feeling.
But I agree that for this attack mechanically is not necessary. I don't know that for this attack is the best transition either.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. There's no way to make it an official alteration effect, though. I was going to say that would be nice if we could say, additionally, if it removes this, it gets that.
I think they were saying something about looking at the if clauses, right? In some cases, so that may change.
They hinted something about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think JS asked the question so many times that eventually said, yes, we will look at this.
They want them to stop asking.
JS being another rules lawyer from the Discord. What was the next card that we talked about? It would have been breaking and entering. That's pretty straightforward. I don't see any rules stuff that we need to cover there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems pretty straightforward, right? There's nothing there.
Works for me.
Okay. We'll move to the next one, which was mine. Okay. So, Sko, you already mentioned, that was a good point, that if you're confused and you use this thwart ability, Thief Extraordinaire, that you still get to look at the top two. That's really good. But it must be at least, it must be 2 cards, right? If it's 1 card, I imagine you cannot pay that cost and you cannot do the ability. Do we agree?
Yes, I think so.
Sounds right to me.
Yeah, probably. I dislike it.
Just look at a define.
All right, so it's 2 sentences, right? And there was this thing going around for a little while. So Steel Fist is 2 sentences.
Yep.
And what if only discard 1 of those cards is the cost? The other part of it is not a cost. It's just some text that you do at first, but it includes the exhaustion of
Yeah. At least that wouldn't be broken because it does require you to exhaust. So.
And so you couldn't. This is one of those weird ones. Like, I mean, I think this might be the problem with having the statuses and the whole multi-sentence cost problem. Like, that we had Steel Fist and the ruling went one way and then they switched it back, and it was kind of like, well, looking for trouble, I don't know, that first sentence isn't part of the cost. It's not like it's a huge deal. This one would be broken. If that first sentence is not part of the cost, in terms of like, you could just remove confused, because the discard one of those cards fails. Just kind of fails because you didn't execute the first half of the ability. And so if the first half of the ability is the effect, and you have this thwart ability, and you cancel the effect of it, doesn't do anything. So you can just be like, I do this. Oh, look, my thwart's gone. Now I'm going to actually do it. Or my confused status is gone. So now I'm going to actually do it. So I think that...
oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think that this might be the card that made that Steel Fist ruling actually have to reverse. Looking for trouble is not so bad, but this card... I mean, this is not reconcilable with the old Steel Fist ruling that we bargained for, or which they would go back to.
So you're saying that the first sentence there in that action is an ability and not a cost?
I think it needs to be a cost. At least the exhausting Remy part of it needs to be a cost.
And what makes you think that it could possibly not be one?
It's just that when they first ruled Steel Fist, that they could have this kind of a effect period costs arrow effect, right? Like that initial Steel Fist ruling that we got.
Okay. But that was the one that was overturned or corrected later.
Yeah, it was overturned, and for a long time I want it to have been overturned because I thought it was better, and I didn't really think that it broke anything. But this card, it breaks.
I agree.
So, and then how do we suggest people handle it? I'm just going to handle it as if both of those things were costs, and I'll be fine. Is that how everybody else is going to play it?
Oh yeah, that's definitely the case right now.
Yeah, it's what the most recent ruling on Steel Fist implies. So yeah, I think that's how you play it.
I'm good with that for Remy's ability. I'm still not good with it for Steel Fist, but
Yeah, yeah. There's still the slight question of if there aren't two cards to look at. But I think if there aren't, then the cost fails and you can't do the ability.
And Sco, you would see the two sentences as cost. Is that right?
Yeah, I agree that this is, maybe might have been part of them deciding to roll that back after the fact. I think Theorel has it right.
So we had charge, we had my card, we had Scott's card, and I'm looking for Theorel's card.
Flush. So I think the big thing here that came up is the place one charge counter on Gambit as the first effect of this. I know a lot of people should be able to spend that charge counter on Royal Flush. I think there's some comments of why does it even have that if you can't. I think as a very basic reason is because it doesn't change the game state without it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So
very good point.
It needs something that'll change the game state, so it has that effect, which changes game state, so you can play the card.
True. I would love if it were just at the end.
I would prefer it because I think it would cause a lot less confusion.
So we see it more as a rebate than I get an extra counter for this event so that I actually deal damage.
Yes. Yeah, because throw the card is an interrupt to playing an attack event. It happens before you resolve the hero action on Royal Flush. So you spend the charge counters, then you add one, then you do the 3 lots of damage.
Yeah, I remember I did like a step layout of this and it didn't seem to work as the steps are laid out. So it would appear to be more of a rebate.
I mean, I think even as written, I don't feel like there's any raw contradiction. I don't think there's any ambiguity, rather. There's just no way that you could get that charge counter before you have to spend them. But I do understand the general confusion reading the card and thinking you can.
Yeah, I agree that it's not that it's clear with everything we have written. Although the intent leaves me with a big question mark. Why make that the first sentence? We could just could be so much easier if we just put it at the end. But there's also adjacent to this we have new wording on Gambit's hero ability, right? That event deals +1 damage for each counter removed.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think we are all just going to treat as the same as melee, deals 1 additional damage.
Yeah.
And letting it, the existence of Royal Flush basically proves that they intend that ability to affect multiple instances in the same event. So I don't really think there's a question there, but just says +1 instead of additional 1 to save some space, maybe.
Yeah, that's definitely how I'll treat it, as if it said additional instead of the +1. Because that just saves the headache there.
In this case, I can believe that they chose that wording to save space. Whole increase damage by 1 versus deal 1 additional damage. I don't understand why they have both of those wordings in the game. Pick one.
And now there are 3.
There's 3 of them. At least this one has a reason to exist.
Yeah, fair.
All right. I think that's all the cards that we picked. Is there any other cards or abilities from the Gambit pack, which I should also say comes with the Exodius? Sorry. I heard somebody say that on YouTube once, and now it's burned into my mind. Comes with the Exodus modular pack in the back. Any other abilities or cards that we want to discuss quickly for rules stuff?
Query for the group. Natural agility, his defense event, 0 cost event, hero interrupt defense. When you defend against an attack, place 1 charge counter on Gambit, cost arrow. For each charge counter on Gambit, you get +1 defense for that attack. Would we consider this playable from a changes the game standpoint if the defense is not a basic defense. Does giving Gambit +1 defense that doesn't do anything change the game? Question mark.
I think so. I think boosting stats.
Yeah, I would look for other events that just give you like a plus defense. I think those are in the game, right?
I'm cool with it. I would say yes.
I think boosting stats is a game state change, even if that stat is not being used.
I agree.
I do wonder, can you play this if you have no charge counters?
Yeah, you should be able to, right?
If you have it, I would say no. Yeah.
It's not a requirement that you have a charge counter.
Well, the effect of it doesn't change the game state without accounting for the cost if you don't have any. Good question.
You have to do the cost first so that the effect will have a game state change?
Yeah.
Yeah, technically, you're right. You cannot, I would say.
You guys just ruined so many people's day. Just
Yeah, don't spend all your counters in the player phase, or you won't be able to. Yeah, so there you go, Royal Flush hooking you up yet again with that rebate. It's letting you do your defense event.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it. Thanks for spinning that positively. Cool combo. Okay, so just natural agility, and yeah, that's a good point for natural agility. So you must have at least one counter, we think, in order for it to be a legal play.
I feel personally less confident about it than you guys, but I don't have an argument for it really. I just one of those things where I just wonder if they would say like, no, you always have a charge counter because the cost creates one, and it's the whole disregarding the cost. What exactly does that mean? Like,
yeah, they wrote themselves into a corner with that.
The trick is just to never ask the question and just.
Yeah, I mean, at a table, I would never have a problem with someone playing this with no counters. Go ahead and do it.
Yeah, same here. Okay, so that should be the Gambit pack. Let us know what cards you would pick for the Gambit pack, and let us know what you think of our picks. This has been the Card Takes episode number, I don't know what.
19.
19. Scott had it written down. Thank you, Scott. Episode 19.
I checked earlier.
Thank you, Scove, for coming. We appreciate you being here. And do you want to mention your YouTube channel?
Thank you guys for having me. It was a total blast. And yeah, you can find me on YouTube or on Discord as SC0E. Come hang out.
All right. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming, Theorel. Thanks for coming, Scott.
good time.
Yes.
And remember, when you would rather not read the rules reference, listen to the card text instead.